What is the best way to leave money to my disabled child? Attorney Christopher Hayner explains, if a client has a disabled child, the client should create a supplemental needs trust for the child. A supplemental needs trust can either be contained in the client's last will and testament, which is called a Testamentary Supplemental Needs Trust, or the Supplemental Needs Trust can be a standalone trust. With a Testamentary Supplemental Needs Trust, the client does not fund the Supplemental Needs Trust during life, but instead, the Testamentary Supplemental Needs Trust is funded upon the client's death as part of the probate process. The benefit to a Testamentary Supplemental Needs Trust is the client can have free access to their assets during lifetime, including the ability to pay for the disabled child's needs as they see fit. In contrast, a standalone Supplemental Needs Trust is funded during the client's lifetime. A benefit to creating a standalone Supplemental Needs Trust is the Supplemental Needs Trust is already funded prior to the client's passing, ensuring the disabled child will have the benefit of the assets transferred into the Supplemental Needs Trust immediately. A second advantage to the standalone Supplemental Needs Trust is, in creating a standalone Supplemental Needs Trust, the client can avoid the cost, expense, and uncertainty of a probate proceeding, which, in some instances, can leave the Testamentary Supplemental Needs Trust underfunded or unfunded. If utilizing a Testamentary Supplemental Needs Trust, the client must ensure sufficient assets are includable in the probate estate to fund the trust. Whether using a Testamentary Supplemental Needs Trust or a standalone Supplemental Needs Trust, once the Supplemental Needs Trust is funded, the trustee will manage all assets for the benefit of the beneficiary. The trustee of a Supplemental Needs Trust is prohibited from making distributions from the trust directly to the disabled child, which could cause the disabled child to lose government benefits. The true purpose of the Supplemental Needs Trust is to ensure the disabled child receives certain comforts provided by the Supplemental Needs Trust, such as birthday parties, vacations, etc., without the child losing the government benefits the child is receiving. In addition, a Supplemental Needs Trust is structured to provide outright distribution to non-disabled children once the disabled child dies. Because distributions from Supplemental Needs Trust to disabled children tend to be smaller distributions, often the non-disabled children, who will receive distributions once the disabled child dies, receive a substantial distribution. By utilizing a Supplemental Needs Trust, a client with a disabled child gets the benefit of knowing both that the disabled child will receive distributions from the Supplemental Needs Trust to increase the disabled child's standard of living during life, and that the client's non-disabled children will ultimately inherit the balance of the Supplemental Needs Trust upon the disabled child's passing. Call now for a personalized evaluation or visit his website at www.chaynerlaw.com.